Good young people. I'm glad, happy to have this opportunity to speak with you. As our sister introduced, my name is Jack Corley, and I do live in the Prague headquarters. Been living there now for over 6 years. And because my region of responsibility is Eastern Europe, but actually doesn't include the Czech Republic. I tried to negotiate a swap between Ukraine and the Czech Republic with Dr. Schmidt, but there was no deal, unfortunately. He can have Ukraine and I can take Czech, but I'm not sure the Czech members would approve. But anyway, it's just what I want to talk about this morning is I'm going to use a presentation that I used right here in this hotel in February. I was asked to give my testimony during a 7-day workshop. So for those who already were there, like Grace and some others, I think, Julia, were you there at the time? And others, perhaps, sorry to bore you again. But I'll be talking a little bit more about not just, when, where, what, but actually pointing out what did I learn along the way. So therefore the title, My Journey in Life. I was thinking that, I am now following true parents. I've been following true parents for 50 years. Anybody here over 50? No. Okay. And I was a sprightly young 20-year-old when I began to follow true parents. So any of you who can do addition can figure out how old I am. So, if besides being born, that was the second most important decision of my life, and the one that I will have no regrets. I have been, of course, a very imperfect disciple, child of true parents, but I will never regret the day I made a commitment. I'm going to take this role, and I could not have imagined, what was in store for me: challenges, blessings, adventures, so many things. As you'll see later, I have been to 83 countries. I have worked substantially in 11 or 12. And, I've had many responsibilities. I became a leader in our movement 40 days after I joined with a 2-day workshop. There were no 7-day workshops at the time. So I was really thrown in at the deep end. And I was made a church leader in a city in Ireland called Cork. And it was where I used to study several months earlier. And I was a member of an organization called Sinn Féin. I don't know if you know about that. It's a very left-wing, anti-British organization, and more Marxist, I would say. And so, I was very much, nationalist. Wanted to unite Ireland. So, but I was a sort of a rebel looking for a cause, I would say. And because I was going through a period in my life where, I grew up in a very devout Roman Catholic family. We went to church every Sunday. We prayed the Catholic Rosary every evening. We prayed before every meal. And then my high school was a Catholic boarding school where I was living with the priests and being taught by them every day and having to go to Mass every morning, which I hated. And decided, through that experience, I'm not going to join them. So that was my mother's hope, I think, that I would become a priest, but I had other plans. Anyway, so here I am. So I want to, in a way, go through a little bit, first of all, my family background, because, where we're born, what kind of family we're born into, all these things have a real impact on who we eventually become. Any of you here choose your parents, your race, the language, first language you're going to speak, the nation that you're living in? Did you choose your nation? That's really important, isn't it? Why don't you have a choice? Wouldn't you think you should have a choice? I want to be born to these parents, in this country, and this color, and this, that, and so on. So actually, much of what makes us who we are, we have absolutely no control over. That's the reality. So some people are blessed because of that. Others feel cursed because of that. And I'm sure, among your friends in society that some children wish they weren't born, right? And wish they had different parents or different family experience. So many things. which affect our lives. So, it's really important also for us to understand each other, to also understand each other's background, things like this. So, Sarah, maybe we can move to the first slide. Well, this is a summary of my life. I tried to put everything on one slide. And so the first part is, of course, my birthplace, birth date, study, religion, joining UC, being blessed, children, grandchildren. And then from there down, it's about mission. So I joined in August 26, 1973. I will never forget that. But then I became a leader in October, I think it was. So, there was no courses like this and training and all kinds of experiences. We just thrown in there and, go forth with faith. It almost killed me, actually. I'll talk more about that later. Anyway, so this is various countries that I've worked literally around the world. And I'm grateful that I have these opportunities. Actually, I should step out of the way if they don't block your way. I take up quite a bit of space, so I know it's a problem for you. So, and as we have one child, a son called Nikolai. The reason he's called Nikolai is because he was born in Moscow, 1995. We come to talk about that later. Okay, Sarah, we can move up. Where was I born? Ireland. Have you heard of Ireland? Any of you know Ireland? Grace knows Ireland, I know. So, it's a small green emerald island off the European coast. And people often go there and say, oh, how beautifully green it is, but we pay for that because of all the rain. So I grew up actually very much, I was born and my childhood years were spent around here. And we call it the next village to New York. I was born into a farm. I was one of 10 children, 5 boys, 5 girls. And the eldest son died when I was, well, actually before we were born. He died at 2 years old, so none of us really knew. And my parents actually, as you can see, that's their wedding photograph. They were already quite adult when they married. There's a reason for that, so I'll explain. And then, as you see on the right there, on the left there, that we were a very devout family, and I did enjoy as a child, like Easter and Christmas, not just because of the toys and the Easter eggs, but the spirit of those times, where you really felt people coming together. And but the big question I had always was, would I go to church and get a feeling of the spirituality? And then that's on a Sunday. But then for the rest of the week, we don't feel it anymore. And I thought, why can't we have that spirit 7 days a week? Why don't we have Christmas the whole year round and we're thinking about each other and giving gifts, especially if you're a kid, you definitely would like that, right? So, why can't we have the spirit of Christmas the whole year round? Why just we choose one day or one season? And that's it. And then it's back to the dreary old life again, So in my child's heart, I was feeling, why is it we meet God somehow in these special occasions, and then we lock the door of the church and we leave him there? So where is he for the rest of the week? What's he doing? He's just hanging out in the church. Is that it? It's like you go to visit a mentally ill patient in the hospital and praise him and then just lock the door and leave him there. So why can't we have God 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every year? So that was the big question as I was growing up. Why can't we experience this spiritual kind of sense that I could feel in Christmas or Easter or certain other occasions, and so on? So I'm not sure that's your experience because you're a whole different, situation. Next. Now, this is an interesting story because my father, when he was 19, immigrated to the United States. At that time, it was around 1930, Ireland was rather poor. It had just become free from 800 years under the United Kingdom. And it was trying to find its way, and it was really, and of course it was after the First World War, even the UK was struggling economically. And so then, it was really tough. Life was really tough. So he then took a ship and then went off to America. And then he began to work in New York. And after a few years, he applied for and received American citizenship. That time, especially for Irish immigrants, it was quite easy to become U.S. citizen. I also, because of that, have U.S. citizenship. So I have dual Irish and American citizenship. And then he had to, because he became a citizen, he had to do the draft, where they spent some time in the army. And then went back to work. But then the day after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, he was called back into the military again. And then he was sent over to Europe, originally Northern Ireland, which is part of Britain. And then he did the D-Day Normandy landing. You've heard about that, right? If you studied history here in Europe, you have heard about that. He wasn't on the first wave because he was elder at that point, but also he was military police. That was his position. And so then he had to actually, when he landed in Normandy, he had to then go ahead with the army, checking out bridges, roads, making sure everything is passable so that they could move forward. And he went all the way to Berlin. And then when he was in Berlin, he met Soviet soldiers. So that picture on the right it's with two. He's in the middle of that picture, and the two guys. He's like they're Soviet soldiers. And the words on top, Rodinu, means the way to the homeland, the way to the fatherland, or the homeland. And little would he have imagined that his son, myself, would spend 15 years in Russia, in Moscow, and that his grandson would be born there and take a Russian name. Life is really interesting. So, but one thing that he felt strongly, and he used to tell us when I was a kid, he really felt sorry for the German people because he felt they were the victims of that system. And of course, many supported fully and happily, but still they became the victims of an evil system. And then, he felt, and I thought that's amazing. He was sent there to kill them. So how could he like those guys? So it also was teaching me a lesson that you can look sometimes beyond your enemy and understand they're human too, and they're being misled or they're being fooled by some idea, and we should try to understand those things. And this is Ireland. The right side is the home. I was brought up it's a farm. Right next to that long building with the flat roof, the pigsty. So you can imagine the perfume that surrounded our home the whole time as I was growing up. And I had to clean it regularly. And then left side, that lady, by the way, in the middle is not my mother. It's the daughter of my mother's friend who happened to be visiting. But I'm in that photo somewhere. Now, let me see if you guys are sharp spiritually. Where am I in that photo? Which of the three boys, which one do you think?
The first one.
The one on the far right.
The first one.
Okay, the first one means on the left.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's me. And just behind me, you see that bright colored cow? That was the cow I had to make every morning before going to school. And I really hated it because, it's messy and the tail swishes against you. And sometimes they kick the bucket because it was damp. We didn't have machine. But why I'm mentioning this also is that how many of you have ever milked a cow? Did you know milk comes from cows, not from cows? You have to say, no, I know what I'm not. If you're going to say anything I'm talking about here. Huh? So, well, just so you know, milk comes from an animal called a cow, okay? Or a goat sometimes. And so I had to milk one, and my brothers had to, milk others. So, and then we had to walk to school, right? When you arrived in school, we had to walk 2 kilometers across fields. and in the winter, it's wet and dirty. And so when you got to school, you really felt, among the elite kids from the big town nearby, which had about 500 people. They were kind of, oh, you smell awful, because you had just been milking a cow. Your head is against the cow's body. You pick up the smell, right? So I got persecuted right from the earliest stages for being a country bumpkin. And so, but worse was still to come. I also picked up a disease from the cow called ringworm. I don't know if you've heard of it. The people who are around animals, especially cows, and there's a disease called ringworm. It's called ringworm because it's like it's in kind of a circle shape. And usually it's just on the skin somewhere, the hands or the legs or whatever. But I got a very unusual type. It actually went in on my head, under my hair. Then all my hair fell out. So for about a year, maybe almost 2 years, I don't even remember now. I was as bald as a baby's bottom. Completely bald. So imagine you show up at school, bald, and kids, they really make fun of you, So that was the challenge for me. And there was no guarantee that it would grow back because the doctor thought, looks like the roots of your hair have been destroyed. So you're not going to be, you have to wear a wig for the rest of your life or just go around like, you probably don't know this guy, but there's a famous actor called Yul Brynner who was totally bald. So I was facing that at about 8 years old, I think. And that was really a challenge, So, but somehow I got through it and the hair grew back. And that was quite a miracle that it grew back. Next. Then these are some early pictures. Now, I'll give you another chance. On the bottom right, sorry. Right. Primary school. No, you want to try? On the right, yes, you're right. I gave it away. So, and this is not, of course, it's just some of us in school. So the clothes we were wearing were all donated because, our family was not at all rich and sometimes barely surviving. And our father in his last years also, when we were still young, was in a mental hospital because of the war experience and stuff. So we went through a lot of difficulty. And but luckily we had many cousins in America who used to send every now and again parcels full of clothes. So we'd be walking around the countryside in Ireland dressed in American clothes, and people were kind of looking at me, where did you come from? So anyway, we got through that. But there was also one great thing is that the Catholic Church really encouraged young boys to go to boarding school. My mother took advantage of that. The diocese, the Catholic sort of hierarchical system, they paid most of the cost of the education. And so that's why I spent then 5 years from 13 to 18 years old being taught by priests. And I think that was a really good experience because it was like a stepping stone between childhood and the world. I wasn't abruptly thrown into the world. I went through a sort of a mini world in the boarding school because you have all kinds of characters there too. The good, the bad, generally quite good, but there were some real rascals as well. And so, you had to kind of fight for your position. We played rugby, so we definitely fought, on the rugby field. So, and this, on the right side there, that was just last year. I was visiting. I went back to see my old school. It used to be a British mansion in Britain-controlled Ireland, and then it was converted into a school and had its own 300-acre farm and stuff. So it was actually a very beautiful place in countryside. Next. And then, 1972, my younger brother, who was actually in that boarding school, because my older brother had graduated, then I graduated, and then finally my younger brother, he was attending that school. And he was actually a champion discus thrower. He won, even on the European level, the gold medal for under 19 at the age of 16 in Darmstadt in Germany. So he was quite he could throw the discus way into the distance. you know, the discus throw, right? And so his teacher was a member of the Irish Olympic Committee and was planning to have him go to the Canadian Olympics. You know, at that time, I think there was Olympics in Montreal or something. But one time he just felt, what am I doing here? I'm wasting my time. So one night he snuck out, climbed over the wall, literally, hitchhiked his way to Dublin, the capital of Ireland, and then got a job. The job was really interesting. It was wheeling a hat factory for women, right? And he would have all these boxes and boxes of hats. He had to wheel them through the center of Dublin to some other place, like some warehouse or something. And he would always pass by one place where our members were witnessing. For your information, Brazen was in front of Trinity, right by the bank of them. And so he was stopped several times, and he liked the people. He thought, wow, they're really good. And then he promised he would come, and eventually he did. And he listened to the lectures. And he was so inspired, I think more by the love he felt, maybe than by what he understood as a principle. But he did understand, you know, the Messiah is here. And that really affected him. And then right away he was asked, can you go to England to a workshop? Actually, they shouldn't have sent him, he was too young. But he didn't volunteer his age because he was so big and they didn't even think he was under 18. So then he went to a workshop in the UK, and, again listened, and then just joined an MFT team. And, you know, at the age of 16. Then he witnessed to my older sister, and also my younger sister, and then to me. I was the hardest one to reach, I guess. So this is why I have these two photographs together. It's the three same people, right? So now, again, where do you think I am there? Any guess? Which one? The right side, yeah? No, yeah, the left side, yeah. Anyway, and then this one, the color picture was 10 years ago when I celebrated my 60th birthday in London. At that time, I was UK national leader. And my brother and my sister, we didn't plan this, but they just both happened to visit the UK at that time. My brother from America, my sister from Switzerland. And we, South London community organized the birthday party. So that was that. So, next. Now, countries I have worked in or visited. I told you I visited 83 countries by the last count. And the ones which are highlighted in that purple color, these are the ones that I worked in more substantially. Of course, some more than others. Certainly the UK, Ireland, the United States, and Russia, some others. But I worked quite substantially also in other countries with different responsibilities. And to me, that was a great education. And I highly recommend, before you're tied down with family and job responsibilities and so on, try to gain as much experience as you can in really broadening your vision in relationship to people, cultures, nationalities. In other words, try to expand your heart and your mind. Because, you know, we're in a world which is now, you know, becoming smaller because of course, travel and technology, communication systems. And it's really important that the future leaders have a big mind. You're not narrow-minded. You really can embrace the world. You know the name of Father's autobiography, right? As a peace-loving global citizen, right? And that we should try to become. We really become a global citizen. You know, when I visit some countries, I realize they're stuck in this kind of southern mentality. And of course, you should love your country. You should be a patriot to your country. But you shouldn't be a nationalist. You shouldn't be narrow-minded according to any one nation, color, or language, or whatever. You have to really, like God, you have to embrace the world. And I think the more experiences that you have in doing that, the better you will become as a leader. And the whole point of this program, right, is to create the future leaders. So please try to use these kinds of opportunities to learn as much as you can, to also overcome challenges that you surely will meet in this kind of course as well. Okay? Now, one of the people that I will forever be grateful for is actually True Father's first disciple. You may not believe it, but the guy sitting next to him is me. Skinny me. And he was my first Korean leader. He actually, he really taught me the most important things. First of all, about true father, true parents, right? Because he was the one who came with True Father from, North Korea to South Korea to, he was there in Busan. He was with my father's side. He was with my father's side before he went into Hongdae. He was waving Father goodbye and thinking he will never see him again. And so he is an absolute treasure trove of experience and not just history, but actually the internal experiences with Father. And really the most beloved disciple of True Father. And I felt so privileged to work with him. It was just so wonderful. By the way, Sarah, keep me informed about time. I have 2 minutes or 20 minutes. It's short there for a moment. Yeah. So, later I had 15 other Korean leaders, some of whom I'd love to strangle, frankly, but I was glad that my first impression of Korean leader was one for the Kim. Sorry to say these things. Excuse me out there in Cyberland. So he really, for me, what he taught me was this. He wasn't trying to be like Father and prancing around, like in the form of True Father, right? He was just my elder brother who wanted me to know our common true parent. That was the lesson I learned from him. I could see even the way he dealt with people, there were members, and I'm sure you know one or two here and there that you hope they were on some other team. But, if you're a leader, you kind of, it's like a hot potato, you want to pass this person on to somebody else because you can't deal with it. He would grab just such a member and make him or her his driver, or work with him in some other way. And many times I saw how this person changed. There was one particular brother that I remember who was from the Netherlands. No slight on the Netherlands. I love the Netherlands. But this individual was definitely difficult to work with. They are known for being stubborn, but it's a national characteristic. So that's a good strength. That's a strength to him. But he was kind of person, why don't you just join some other team? Go somewhere else, or maybe leave the church. And so then Ramon took him as a driver, and it was amazing to see over time how this brother changed, because he felt loved, appreciated, valued. He felt, he wasn't looking at his phone; he was rather seeing what he can do, and so he really changed this brother's life and made him a much better person. And of course, he had a bigger responsibility, but the Reverend won't pick him. But I could see on a very personal level, he really cared, loved, brothers and sisters, and he wanted to convey substantially the heart of true parents. He wasn't just trying to be like Father and being, in form Father, but in substance not. And so to me, that was an important lesson. But yeah, we really have to practice. There was one example I can share with you when we were together in our headquarters in London, Lancaster Gate, and some of you may know. And upstairs there's a ballroom, it's the main room. And we were coming down from even a floor above that. I was with one him because actually I was his workshop lecturer, so I worked very closely. And then as we were passing by the ballroom, he kind of opened the door just to peek in and see what's going on there. It's something. And the ballroom also was being used by members as a prayer room at the time. And so he looked in to see probably is there somebody in there praying. There was one French sister, and she was the female version of the Dutch brother. But kind of very spiritual and kind of all over the place. So you can imagine her prayers, like you could almost see fog rising over her, wafting here and there and everywhere, but it's not going anywhere really. But she prays desperately. She would go out on the street witnessing and she'd drag back and somebody who's drunk, if she couldn't distinguish the guy's drunk or sober. So it was really not an easy case, actually, to be honest. And again, that's kind of situation where, oh God, why do I have to have her on my team? So, and so then, do you know these kind of things go on? You're too innocent, right? So then she was in there praying and she had her bag placed behind her, right? And she was like just deeply in prayer. And then Rabbi Kim walked in very quietly. He took out his wallet, pulled out some money, put it in her bag, and slipped back out without disturbing her. So imagine when she gets to look in her bag later and says, oh my God, that prayer worked. So that's the kind of person he was, actually. I could feel many times he was really trying to serve and take care of people, you know, even without being known. And so I was so glad, the point I want to make is I was so glad that, you know, I could gain that experience with somebody who had been directly educated by a true father. I couldn't spend time with father. Of course, I saw Father many times, but I was not able to be with him, learn those lessons directly. But through him, I could learn so many valuable lessons. And, you know, when Mother talks about the early days, going back to the spirit of the early days, I think nobody epitomized the spirit of the early days than Reverend Wong Kim. So, yeah, it was really wonderful. Thanks. Then I was blessed. Actually, my blessing path wasn't easy. I was originally matched in 1978. 3 years later, the sister left. We weren't blessed. She left. Then I was re-blessed in 81. And then I'm blessed in 82 in Madison Square Garden. And unfortunately, when I was called by Father as National Leader of Ireland to go to America, she didn't want to follow. And finally, I was matched to my wife, Renee, who you saw earlier, maybe in the picture, and blessed in 89 in Korea. And so here we are. So my wife actually was working on the Washington Times. That's why I have the picture of Washington Times. She's in there, in the staff. She's the founding member of the Washington Times and worked there for 9 years. Wow. And then I was at that time the state leader of Iowa State. We used to nickname it IO a lot because we were always in debt and always had to fundraise. So yeah, that was when we were originally. I went to America as part of what we call One World Crusade, and so we traveled around. In my case, 12 different states, and I ended up. When the music stopped, I ended up as state leader of the state of Iowa. It's totally out there, flat, completely flat. It's like you could drive for hours and there's no hill. Sometimes there's even no other car going the other direction or even other things. You know, it's like America's like this, you know, it's a huge place. These long, boring highways. Anyway, but I loved it. I came to understand a lot about the heart of America. The spirit of the American people. And it was important for me because my father had, you know, put his life on the line for America as a member of the American military. So it was important that I could really come to understand the country, and I came to love the country. And of course, my wife is American, and then it helped me to understand her background. Thanks. Then believe it or not, that's me there. This is in Penang, Malaysia, because I actually was appointed by father to be IW for the Asia region, so it stretched from Pakistan all the way down to Indonesia, and about 15 countries in between. And so that was, again, an amazing experience of learning. I learned so many things. Because you can read about a country or hear about a country or see pictures, movies and documentaries. But the best way to really understand is go to that place, meet the people, and not just as a tourist, but really, go there and really try to get to the heart and the soul of the people. And so that was such a learning experience. Like one day I remember I flew from Singapore, which is the most perfect city-state in the world, and landed in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And then I went to Calcutta, and visited Mother Teresa, the famous Catholic nun, Mother Teresa. I wanted actually to meet her, and I had an appointment to meet her, but unfortunately she was sick the day I arrived, and was in the hospital. I couldn't see her, but I visited her home, where she was giving hope to the hopeless. Anyway, so for about a year and a half, I traveled literally every few days around that region. So I also even went into Pakistan to a place called Peshawar, which is right on the border of Afghanistan. At that time, there were many refugees from the war in Afghanistan. The Soviet Union was occupying Afghanistan. And I met these refugees, and they were, really suffering that situation. I went to the border at that time between Cambodia and Laos, where our members were doing medical service there, taking care of refugees who were inside Thailand. And, so I could see also our members. I went fundraising in a place called Mindanao, South Philippines, on the back of a Jeep, and it's like you sweat all day. So, I mean, for me, suddenly it was so hot. They're used to it, but I was not used to it. And you make almost nothing. And you eat very simple food. And then you wonder, like, God, could I keep doing this for years, as many of those members were doing? In the West, we can't fully appreciate some cases where our movement members are working. And that's why, if you go out to such a place. Now, of course, generally the world situation has improved, more countries. But there are still places where you can really experience hardship. And it's good to know. It's good to know. As Mother Teresa's famous statement is, give love until it hurts you. So, love people until you get hurt. Because you realize, you think you've got pain, but you can just leave. And a few hours later, you're back in the rich Western society, wherever. But they have no way out. So, how to understand people. Next. So here are some of the countries: India, Malaysia, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, and Bangladesh twice. Okay, Indonesia, Hong Kong. At that time, it was part of China, under Britain. Sri Lanka, Singapore, and Thailand. And that was a great experience. So again, I can say that I came to know brothers and sisters, that I'm still relating to today. So whenever I go to a meeting in Champion, I'm meeting people that, I was meeting over 30 years ago now. And, we went in the back of a Jeep fundraising in the Philippines, or I rode around New Delhi in the back of a motorcycle with Robert Kittle, for example. He was that time a leader in that area. And so, it was really fun, the back of the motorcycle, trying to dodge cows which lie on the street, or sit on the street, and cow turds everywhere. And, then so you get every kind of experience, and you could do along in Malaysia, and you could stop over and reach over and pull some bananas on the tree and eat them as you go. And another place you can climb some coconut or whatever. So a whole different life experience. Yeah. And next, wow, the contrast couldn't have been more. I remember I moved to Moscow, and at that time it was part of the Soviet Union, right? In 1990. And I remember sitting in my It was actually a student dormitory where I was renting an office and renting a room to stay. by myself at the beginning. And I was thinking back, so now, what was I doing 1 year ago? And I remember I was snorkeling in the Maldives. You know what the Maldives? Have you heard of the Maldives? It's not Moldova, Maldives. It's south of India. And it's like a whole string of islands, with beautiful coral reefs. And there's the most amazing fishing. You take like white bread, and go down, and they just all gather around and eat out of your hand. And it was so warm and beautiful because it's quite close to the equator. And then a year later, I'm freezing in the Soviet Union. I'm sitting in his office, and the phone system was so you could not call out of the Soviet Union at that time. The first year I was there, and we had to send every month 400 students to America, and we had to send information about them. Who they are, passport numbers, what they're studying, age, and so on. And then I couldn't call American. So I had to sometimes just sit in the office waiting for America to call me. So often I had to sit until 2 a.m. because they might have been trying to call me for several hours already, but they couldn't get through because the number of lines going into the Soviet Union was so limited. And so they were often just busy. So they had to sit by the phone in New York, dialing and dialing and dialing. Eventually, maybe at 2 a.m. my time, they got through. And then I would have a whole list, or many lists of names for the next group of students that were going to go to America. Father organized a program where we brought over 3,000 Soviet students to the United States for a 10-day program. And originally in UTS, Barito, but then later in some hotel in New York State. But there was no fax machine. Have you heard of a thing called a fax machine? No, you haven't heard, huh? Yeah, you guys, you're way too far ahead. Have you heard of a dial phone?
Yeah.
Kind of, right? We need to educate these guys about the future of technology. So then, no fax machine, right? And how do I get these lists? Because they were illegal in the Soviet Union. It was against the law to have a fax machine. Although I eventually stuck one in, but anyway. So I had to go to a hotel nearby called the Cosmos Hotel. And there was a business center just beginning from a Canadian company. And then I could give them, I had usually about 10 pages of lists to send. Each page cost $10.
Oh.
So I had to spend $100 just sending. So most of my budget was spent trying to get lists of names to America, And I won't even begin to talk about how to find the food in some years at that time. It's another story. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, of course, it was after True Parents had come there, and in 1990, in April 1990, then Father made the decision to invite Soviet students to America. Next. So this is the first office, actually, that I was in. It looks like I'm on the phone, but I'm probably just posing there. And that was it. And this is a dial, D-I-A-L. Got that? Oh. So, and my wife, Renee, who was still at the Washington Times, was visiting me for about a week. She came from Washington to see if I'm surviving the experience. She was so shocked to discover when she opened my closet full of cigarettes. Oh my God, what are you doing? Is it so difficult? I think you should come back. Actually, that was the currency. The taxis and for VIPs that we needed to meet the Ministry of Education, because the ruble was useless. So then you'd go on the street and wave a packet of Marlboro. As they negotiate, how many Marlboros does it take to get from here to Gorky Street? Then 3, okay. There you go. And so I walk around all the time carrying cigarettes. You won't believe some of the stories. I can spend a whole day in. But I won't. Let's move on. And then it moved from that sort of situation, and just 3 years later, True Mother spoke in the Kremlin in front of 7,500 people. I was going to tell that story, but it would take too long. I have only about 4 minutes left. So, really? Okay, because it's now 30 years anniversary, and this time next week, I'll be speaking in Moscow because I'm going there on Thursday, and we are going to have a celebration 1 week from today about the 30th anniversary of True Mother's visit. She came in 1992 after the founding of Women's Federation. She went on a world tour. We wanted to get the Kremlin for her, but the father gave us only 8 days notice of when she's coming to Russia. Every other country knew weeks ahead, months ahead. But for some reason, I don't know if it was security or something, we had to wait, and we didn't know. We knew she's coming, but we didn't know when. Then we were in the middle of a Mr. and Miss University contest, which kept us very busy anyway. 8 days before True Mother was then coming. And then we had to think, oh God, how do we get now the place for Mother to speak? So when we heard before that contest that Mother is going to come on the 21st of November, as it turned out, then we quickly printed up leaflets advertising her speech, because we had about 1,500 audience in the Mr. and Miss University contest. We printed up these flyers advertising Mother will speak in the Kremlin on this date, but we didn't have it. So that's a valuable document. It's not like a valuable stamp. So we actually printed it up. We gave it out to 1,500 people, said, be at the Kremlin at this time. It was like 4 in the afternoon next week. And then we had to think, oh, no, how do we get the Kremlin? And Dr. Suk, Junho Suk, he was leader at the time. He was a man of really strong faith and determination. And so we thought, well, we might have a little difficulty getting the Kremlin and filling in with 7,500 people, but let's get a backup. So we got a backup of a movie theater, which had 3,500. And we paid for it and secured it. And it was not too far from the Kremlin in central Moscow. But then we thought, we've got to get the Kremlin. I kept getting calls from Mother's assistant at that time, was Peter Kim. Have you got the Kremlin yet? We got the Kremlin yet? No, we're working on it. Hey, what's the chances? Oh, we're going to get it for sure. Dr. Buck said so. I would love to agree with it. So then, we broke our butts to get it, but we didn't get it. Several things happened. First of all, we had secured the movie theater, and they tried to cancel because they got some pressure. But because we paid for it and we had the receipt, they couldn't do that. But then we decided we'd keep going until the last moment to get the Kremlin. So the night before Mother was due to speak, it was a Saturday night, I was with Dr. Suk in the Kremlin, meeting the director of the Kremlin, fighting with him. I mean, literally, Dr. Suk used to actually grab him. We need it, And we actually pulled him out of a ballet that was going on downstairs, the hall where he was due to speak. He was in the photo. We almost strangled him, I think. So we had to get it, we need it. He said, we never advertised it. He said, it doesn't matter, that's your problem. He said, well, it's going to be 7,500 people, trying to get into the Kremlin. You're responsible if you don't give us it all. So screw with it. We didn't mention. So anyway, literally until midnight of the night before True Mother was coming, we were literally fighting. And then the guy would get up to go out because he was fed up with it. And then Dr. Suk would grab him and shut him down and say, no, don't leave now. And he was amazing that he didn't punch Dr. Suk. And then eventually we realized at midnight, okay, we better refocus to the movie theater and then have people guiding people there. And so what happened eventually was, we did have the talk at the movie theater. And we more than filled it. But because we had invited thousands more, then we had to hire literally 20 police to patrol, because people began to line up in minus 20 degrees 2 hours before the event. We had all the contacts because of we were working with educators and teachers and professors. So they were inviting all their people, the students, everybody. And then they showed up, and then at one point the door had to be closed because it was full. And people were literally squeezed up against the door. I remember seeing faces like squashing into the door, and the police trying to keep them back. And then Mother was successful there. But when Mother was leaving, as she was about to leave at the airport, I was with Dr. Sokin, the VIP. And then Dr. Sokin said, Jack, would you like to just share some report to Mother? So, well, first of all, Mother, I want to apologize that this time we couldn't get the crown. And then Mother, I thought she'd say, it's okay, don't worry, it's fine. No, Mother said, it's okay, next time. Do we have to go through this again? And sure enough, a year later to the day, it was a different date, but it was the same day, Sunday, November 22nd. Actually, Mother showed up, and it was no less crazy because we had a backup at Moscow University, but they cancelled it, and there's nothing we could do about it. Then on the Mother was supposed to speak on a Sunday. On the Thursday, the Kremlin canceled. So we have mothers coming to speak on Sunday, and we don't have a place. Now, of course, I felt bad, but Dr. Zucker was the one who had to face the music. So, here we are, and I was thinking, God, this is not really happening. It's just a bad dream. I'll wake up eventually, but it wasn't. It was real. But eventually, we were able to turn things around, and then Mother could speak in the Kremlin to a full house, in November 1993. And again, there are many other stories beside that, but that's the way. Now, moving along. Sorry, I know I'm over time already. This is just some pictures from the earlier days. That's on the left there. That was our first Moscow headquarters. It was an apartment, basically. And I was giving workshops there, and students were coming every day after the studies. They would come, and then we used to do lecture training programs. So we had this plastic white sheet, that instead of a whiteboard, you have a plastic thing. You can just stick it to the wall, and then we had students all the way around the room practicing lecturing. It was quite a sight, all these Soviet students. Then on the right side is when we received actually the registration of our church. So our church is registered. I'm going there, as I said, next Thursday. My 1 year multiple entry visa is in the name of Unification Church of Russia. So they tried to cancel it, but actually we succeeded in the court case. Bottom left is the KGB headquarters. And I was doing that because it was just after, the collapse of the Soviet Union. Behind me used to be the statue of Felix Dzerzhinsky, he was the founder of the KGB, but they got rid of him. Then there were some coups, and this is Boris Yeltsin. I'm looking at him from there. There was a coup against him. Actually, a coup against Gorbachev first, and later a coup against Yeltsin. And then I happened to be there. Yeltsin came out of the White House. So I felt a bit like Forrest Gump, Forrest Gump. Next. And then I have been to China more than 60 times, literally, to every province of China, and including Tibet. I spent a week in Tibet, and we developed a thing called the International Educational Foundation, which was basically developing a character education program for the school. So at one point, at the height of our work, we reached out to 50,000 schools in the former Soviet region, Mongolia, and China. And this is just some pictures from that. Next. And our son was born in Moscow. I call it a miracle because actually my wife had a very low percentage chance to become pregnant for various reasons. And after 6 in vitro attempts, the process of in vitro, right? Where the egg is fertilized outside and then inserted in the embryo's inserted, she gave birth to Nikolai, and she was at the age of 42. So, and he took his first steps on Red Square. So he's a real little Russian. Okay, next. And this is my current mission country. So right now I have 18 countries in the region. Until the beginning of this year, Ukraine was part of it, but because of the ongoing situation, it was better to have them come under central region, because many of the members from Ukraine are anyway in central region. Plus, for security reasons, it's better they're not contacting Moscow on a regular basis. Next. Moscow Peace Embassy. So this is our building. Back in 2003, we bought a property, spent 2 years remodeling it. It's a former movie theater, which is now a really wonderful place. Bogdan, I know, has been there, so you know. And it's got about 2,500 square meters. And the main hall can seat comfortably 500, but to possibly 700. Next. This is one of my favorite photos. This was just before the COVID in 2019. We did a huge Chunboy event in our headquarters in Moscow. So these are members almost entirely from Russia, but also some from Belarus, and I think also some of them are from Ukraine, which wouldn't happen today. So, you know, and there are almost 900 second generation Russians alone. So we've got a lot of things going on there, a lot of work developing programs for second gen. And particularly yesterday, in fact, I was giving a talk on an education program, which was working with all of Europe and the Middle East region. And a presentation was given by the Russian sister who leads that program, how to develop a very systematic way of educating from the age of 4 until they graduate from high school, and then preparing for that. So that's it, I believe. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters. You've been a great audience. Hey.
Wow, I'm speechless. I've never heard Uncle Jack speak about his life mission. I mean, it's still ongoing, obviously, but yeah, wow, I'm speechless. Yeah, I hope you were able to take some valuable lessons from that. I wrote some down, but I can say that later. Thank you. So thank you again, Uncle Jack. We'll hear a little bit from him more shortly after our break. So we will come back at 11 a.m. That's roughly 20 minutes. So after that, after the break, we'll have a Q&A session. And we'll be discussing this left-hand side poster about what topics and conversations do you find difficult to tackle, and kind of see where our thoughts lead us with that. So if you have anything else to add, we have post-it notes just here and pens which you can use, and you can stick them on the boards, and we can discuss that when the time comes. So yeah, grab some food, some snacks, rehydrate with water, coffee, take a walk, get some fresh air, and be back here in roughly 20 minutes. Thank you for way back. Yep, okay, ignore that. So now we're going to have our discussion and Q&A. So